Hey guys, welcome back to Spin Cycle. I am of course your host Tony Giles, and thank you once again to everyone out there that is checking out these clips. On today's episode I want to do something a little bit different, and that's to answer an age-old question. Ever since we've had the dawn of music, the invention of recorded sound, one question has plagued us all. What is the greatest hits album of all time? Well, today I'm going to answer that question right here on Spin Cycle. Now, when we talk about greatest hits, there have been too many to count over the years. Every great band, every great singer, songwriter, everybody, to a point, has a greatest hits compilation. And for the most part, they are all great. But of all the music that's been recorded over the last 100+ years, what truly is the greatest hits album? And I have pondered this question many times myself, listening to best ofs of, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Prince, Madonna, George Michael, Michael Jackson. There are so many artists out there that have great back catalogues and greatest hits. When it was on a recent trip to Memphis, I bought an album and it just reminded me, it took me back to my childhood, and I haven't been able to stop listening to it. And ever since I found that album, films, TV shows, the radio, I cannot stop hearing this man's music. And considering this album was released 49 years ago. That's not the album I have here. I have a recent reissue, but the album originally came out 1975. So if my math is correct, that is 49 years ago. It's simply called Greatest Hits, and you need no other name. Al Green's Greatest Hits, in my opinion, is the greatest hits album ever made. Now, my history with this album actually goes back into the very early 80s when I was a very young TG. I remember my parents, who were vinyl loving people, we were record collectors in our house. In fact, my parents are what gave me my kind of start in record collecting. But for some reason, we had one cassette. And I only remember this one cassette because it was a pre-recorded cassette. It wasn't like a cassette that was made at home. This was a cassette that was bought at a store, a pre-recorded cassette. And we only had one, so it was easy to stick in my mind. And that cassette was Al Green's Greatest Hits. And me, as a curious child, I used to love playing with my father's cassette deck. So I would listen to Al Green's Greatest Hits over and over all the time. I don't know why we had it on cassette, why we didn't have it on vinyl, but I used to listen to it incessantly, and those songs they embedded themselves in my psyche, so that for the last 40 some odd years, I have had all of Al Green's hits locked in here. I can sing most of the words to these songs. I can recognize them in TV, film, pretty much whenever I hear, a few snippets. And the thing is, I wouldn't even call myself that big of an Al Green fan. Past the greatest hits, I haven't really investigated his catalogue that much, or I hadn't done up until recently, when I recently purchased, I believe it's called Soul Survivor, the biography of Al Green. And there is also a fascinating documentary on YouTube that covers Al Green's career, where he talks about being a young, struggling musician up until, his entry into the church and how the Lord saved him. And it's a fascinating documentary, and just watching Al sit there on a stool, just with a guitar, just playing some of these simple chords that just strike a note. That right there, that solidified it for me. Al Green's Greatest Hits is truly spectacular. There is not a single skippable track on this album. And the version I have here, as you can see here, we're trying our best. This is a Fat Possum Records reissue, reissued from the legendary High Records. And of course, it wasn't until Al Green teamed up with Willie Mitchell and the high rhythm section that he really became Al Green. He'd had, I think it was kind of regional success. He'd done okay, but once he hooked up with Willie Mitchell, it was off to the races, and there was no turning back from Mr. Green. And every song on this album, without fail, will resonate with somebody somewhere. And this is a single disc LP. I picked this one up for $25.99 on a recent trip to Memphis. And this is a record that has been in press for the better part of 50 years and should never, ever, ever, ever go out of production. This, Rumours, Dark Side of the Moon and Cockroaches that's all that will be left if the nuclear drop ever happens. This record should be around for years to come. Tired of being alone. Call me. I'm still in love with you. Here I am. Come and take me. Love and happiness. The way the man sings about love and relationships, there is no equal. Let's Stay Together, which famously was used in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. Great song, great soundtrack, brought Al Green to the forefront once more. I Can't Get Next to You, You Ought to Be With Me, Look What You Done For Me, and Let's Get Married. So many of these songs written by Al Green himself. And when I say there is not a Duff track on this, I mean there is not a Duff track on this. It is a beautiful thick slab of black vinyl and it sounds absolutely fantastic. As I said, these songs are nigh on 50 years old, but you would not know it. They are so incredibly good. His songs have been covered by everybody. Tina Turner does a fantastic version of Let's Stay Together, but it doesn't really compare when you can grab a copy of this. And now obviously this was pressed at the Memphis record pressing plant and it sounds amazing, and I cannot wait to dive deeper into the Al Green catalogue, and who knows, maybe there'll be some more Al Green on future episodes of Spin Cycle. But look, I've answered a monumental question here today. What is the greatest hits album of all time? This one right here. But that's it for this episode of Spin Cycle. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. And remember, when you think vinyl, think Memphis.